In my previous Lessons Animation Taught Us video, I talked about Walt pursuing what he believed was the most valuable thing.
This dream of Walt's was so all-consuming, so grandiose, so motivating, that Walt could do nothing except for follow it.
And he definitely did that. He pursued something valuable to him. But was it worth it? In my life, I have had two very influential people who I never once met. One of them was Walt Disney, the other was Lucille Ball. Lucy was one of my favorite comedians, and every day after school you could find me sitting on the floor in my parents' living room with an entire bag of popcorn all to myself. And yet somehow I still stayed skinny.
Not anymore, though.
Lucy's antics were hilarious to me. In fact, the whole idea of watching Lucy began when I was about 7 years old on a trip to the library. I had a vague memory of a girl in black and white eating chocolates really fast while a non-existent audience laughed. I remember pawing through the VHS tapes and seeing a picture in black and white of another series, and that picture jogged my memory enough to ask this question. Mom, who is that girl who eats all the chocolate? Of course, given those context clues, my mother had no idea what I was talking about. After another probably 5 minutes of my mom thinking I was completely insane, this was before YouTube when people are now literally known for eating things or this.
Oh, excuse me.
Ew.
I finally said, you know, the girl who eats all the chocolates on the conveyor belt. Do you mean her? It was at that time my obsession with Lucille Ball began.
It's so tasty, too.
On December 3rd of the year 2000, American Masters aired Finding Lucy, a biography of the life of Lucille Ball. In it, they discussed the life of Lucy and her many accomplishments. As that obsessed 13-year-old, I was fascinated by the entire program. However, equally, as that innocent child, the ending both surprised and disappointed me.
We had a party for the cast after the last show. It was in a house that had no furniture in it, and Lucy was a little late. She was very serious, just kept wandering around the various rooms and looked so sad. I just thought it was an omen of what was coming or what had come, which was the end of her career.
She didn't have a good, happy ending, really, I don't think. I don't think so.
When I picture Lucy in my head, I always see a smile. I always see the veneer of happiness. Even today, I still see that. Of course, no person lives up to that image, but as a child, to find out Lucy was unhappy in her final days was a low blow. Lucille Ball was a person I loved to watch. I thought she was so funny, and I taped every marathon of Lucy I could find on TV land. I even molded my language around Lucy. If Lucy could say hussy or darn or gosh, then gosh darn it, I could say the same things that hussy said. She was the pinnacle of success and the innovator of family-friendly entertainment with a message. I kinda seem to have had a penchant for those types of entertainers. If you watch this channel, you know the other entertainer I'm referencing, Walt Disney. I have built a hobby, a non-paying hobby, out of discussing Walt's work. I am fascinated by Walt Disney, his interest in urban planning and transportation, and his obsession with seeing the impossible come to life are so inspiring to me. He was a true innovator. He changed the face of animation, he changed the face of movies, he changed the face of theme parks, he changed the face of Florida. Watch Lessons Animation Taught Us Moving On, it's in the description, for more on that if you want. He left a lasting mark on the world. I don't know that I could think of many other people who have made more change to society. I mean, Lucy left television shows, movies, and this train wreck.
We'll always be bosom buddies.
Ew.
She left far more good things than bad things on this earth, but even she didn't leave nearly the mark that old Uncle Walt did. Of course, Walt Disney didn't know how big his company would become, but today, after all their recent purchases, Walt Disney is one of the biggest production studios in the world. Disney has the 4 largest selling theme parks, only barely rivaled by competitor Universal Studios, and they have now incorporated Marvel, Fox, and Pixar. They even have a controlling stake in Hulu. There are very few things you can touch in life that don't have the mark of Disney on it, in some way, shape, or form. I can't imagine leaving that large a dent in the culture of not just America, but the entire world. Throughout the last 10 years, I have watched or listened to about as much about Walt as I can find. In doing this research, if you want to call it that, I discovered another thing about Walt Disney. His final days also were sad. Decades had passed since Walt began his career in animation. To animation, he added live-action film, then he added television programs, and finally, a wildly successful theme park. Rumor has it he's bought a bunch of swampland in Florida, the crazy loon. In Walt's final days, he would walk slowly up and down Main Street, looking at the windows and the lights.
To me, the most poignant story of this whole last time is his last visit to the studio lot. Just looking at this place that he had built, these people that he brought along, done these amazing things, and knowing he had to leave it all behind.
The whole scene just feels so empty. Recently, my grandpa died. It got me thinking about the finality of life. Regardless of what you do on this earth, the end of your life is the end of your earthly projects. The end of your life is the end of things you can do to make any kind of difference here. And make no mistake, I wildly respect people who make a difference in this world. I hope I make a difference in this world, and I know that my grandpa made a difference in this world, but I believe he lived for something more than this world also. When I look at the two famous people who I admire most in this world, I see that their ending was empty, and I feel sad. These two people left more of a mark on this planet than most of us ever hoped to, but as Diane Disney said, they had to leave it all behind.
Knowing he had to leave it all behind.
What is in it for a man to gain the world if he forfeits his soul? Lucille had lived to entertain.
I didn't want any say.
We know what we're doing. There's no...
When people stopped buying her as Lucy, she stopped having a purpose for life, and that seems sad to me. Walt lived to innovate, but when life was clearly ending and the innovation couldn't continue, his joy faltered. He lost his drive. He looked over his creation with sadness. What had he really done with his life? Disneyland would either be continued by other people or it would be abandoned. Either way, it wouldn't make much of a difference to Walt. Did he live for something that would last? To paraphrase John Piper, to be free means you have the desire, the ability, and the opportunity to do what will ultimately make you happy. And if you have the desire to do something, but no ability to do it, you are not free to do it. And if you have the desire and the ability to do something, but no opportunity to do it, you are not free to do it. And if you have the desire to do something and the ability to do it and the opportunity to do it, but it destroys you in the end, you are not fully free. Not really free, anyway. In the end, the passions of these two people destroyed their spirit, and they went to their graves with their knowledge that they couldn't take their passion with them. Ultimately, they weren't free. When I look at my grandpa, he lived for people, he lived for family, and, especially in his later years, he lived for Jesus. He did not go to his grave with regrets. He wasn't sad. He was ready for the other side. He lived for the eternal. I guess, what are your passions, and will they destroy you in the end? When you die, can you take them with you? Of course, this predicates that you believe in an afterlife. I do. Not everyone does, and I completely understand that. But ultimately, do you live for something eternal, or do you live for something temporary? Will you die with regrets? I have made up my mind not to. I believe that God is eternal, that Christ and his sacrifice for the sins of people are eternal. I believe that it's worth way more than any dream I may have of becoming a monetized YouTuber, perhaps. If I neglect eternity for the goals I set now, I won't have learned anything from Walt. And isn't learning from Walt and his creations the point of this channel? Mostly. Ultimately, I love these two incredible performers. Both their work and their lives teach numerous lessons to all of us. But in the end, we can learn from every part of life, even death. To me, learning from these giants of the industry while remembering the life of my grandpa makes me inspired to live even more for the one thing that can actually satisfy. I don't want to delay joy. Thanks for watching. I know this is a bit of a darker episode and a bit more of a somber episode, but I've been thinking a lot about it recently. Obviously, my audience has people of all different beliefs in it. I have my view and I love to share it, but what is your viewpoint? I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Like, dislike, subscribe, comment, do all the things that kids are doing these days if you want to support my channel. See you again sometime soon.